Having plenty of suspension travel and clearance off-road is very crucial when it comes to getting over big obstacles and conquering the trails. If you're looking for that extra articulation off-road, upgraded control arms and brackets are a big part of that equation, and this long arm upgrade kit by Rough Country will be the most affordable way to take your current lift kit to a whole new level. This kit is designed to be a control arm upgrade for your current lift kit and will make difficult trails a walk in the park. This kit will be for the 97 to 06 TJ owner with a 4 to 6 inch lift, and I would like to call out that this kit will not fit the unlimited models. However, we do have an option for the LJ on our site right now. As for install, this will be a tough 3 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter and will take up most of your day, but welding is not required like a lot of other long arm kits, and we'll show you how to do that in just a minute. Like I mentioned, this will be for the TJ owners that want to upgrade their 4 to 6 inch lift. This will come with all the front and rear, upper and lower single-side adjustable control arms. This will also come with the track bar brackets and all of the hardware needed to extend your suspension. On one side of the control arms, Rough Country uses a polyurethane bushing that's going to be very similar to your standard stock bushing. And then on the other side, there is a spherical joint where you're going to see most of your articulation from. They are fully rebuildable and greasable, and the upper joints will pivot up to 20 degrees while the lowers will pivot up to 35 degrees, which is a big step up from your factory control arms. With the longer angles, you will get a lot more flex off-road. However, long arm kits do hang a lot lower than short arms or stock control arms, and they can get bumped around while you're crawling over big obstacles. Rough Country took that into consideration while designing their lower control arms, making them high clearance to reduce hang-ups on the trail. I would like to mention that an SYE and a CV drive shaft is definitely recommended at 4 inches of lift and pretty much necessary at 6 inches of lift to avoid any driveline vibration. The Rubicon models will not need an SYE for this kit, but a CV drive shaft is still recommended in either case. Also, the exhaust will need to be cut and rerouted in order to bolt this up. Out of all the upgrades that you can do to your suspension, long arms will be at the top of the tier when it comes to cost. However, out of all the long arm kits that we sell, this option right here will be your most affordable one at right around $1,000 at the moment. Rough Country is usually a budget-friendly brand, and they offer good quality and good performance for their price. There are some drawbacks or differences to this kit compared to some other more expensive options though. More expensive options can range anywhere from $1,000 all the way to $2,800, and when getting up into those premium choices, other kits will usually include other features like double adjustable control arms, spherical joints on both ends, as well as extra components like full cross members and trusses. However, most of those will require modification and some welding, yet this one does not. So on top of the price, you are getting some convenience if those extra steps aren't something that you wanted to do. Like I mentioned, this will be a 3 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter and will most likely take your whole day to install. Now I'll pass it over to the installers to show you how this gets done.
First, we'll begin by raising the vehicle up. First step, we're going to support the drivetrain assembly. We're going to remove the skid plate. We're going to take our pole jack, make sure that's nice and supported. Now we're going to remove the skid plate bolts. Using a 1/2 inch socket, we're going to remove the transmission mount bolt. On this mount, we have a stuck nut. Since we're replacing the transmission mount anyway, we're going to go ahead and cut it in half so we can get the skid plate off. Next step, we're going to support the skid plate with a jack stand. We're going to take those other 3 bolts out. Using a 3/4 inch socket. Next step, we're going to take the passenger side bracket, fit it up over the frame. I'll get that started somewhat. Next step, we're going to use a pair of clamps. We're going to pinch this bracket onto the frame, make sure that it's all the way up. We're going to do that for the front and the rear. All right, now we're gonna install the driver's side. Same thing, set the bracket up in. So now that we have our bracket on, we're gonna go ahead and drill a pilot hole through both sides. Now that we have that hole drilled, we're gonna switch to a 17/32 drill bit, and then we're gonna go all the way through the frame again. We're gonna do the same thing for the other side. We're gonna start with a pilot hole. So now we have to drill through the backside as well. So you're gonna wanna get the drill bit as level as possible so you can make sure that the other side lines up. Now that we have our pilot hole all the way through, we're gonna go ahead and switch to our 17/32. All right, so using the supplied hardware, I'm gonna take one of the larger bolts, put a washer on it, send it through the frame, and we're gonna put another washer on the back and then attach our nut. Same thing with the other side. Install a washer. Place our bolt through, install our washer, and then the supplied nut. Now we're gonna use a 19mm wrench and a socket. We'll go ahead and tighten all that up. Once again. First step, we're gonna go ahead and install these clamps, making sure we don't have a gap in this frame rail. Also making sure that our bolt holes are lining up as well. Make a little mark. Make sure you're in the middle. Once you're in the middle and you feel comfortable, your holes lined up, go ahead and drill it through. We're gonna take our large drill bit, spray it with some WD-40. Now we're gonna do the front hole. Go ahead and make sure our hole is lined up. Now we're gonna take our big drill bit. Next step, we're gonna take our supplied hardware, place a washer on the bolt, place a washer, supplied nut, and then we'll do the same thing for the front side. Place a washer on our bolt, stick our bolt through. Then we're gonna get our 19mm socket and wrench, and we'll tighten that all up. So now we're ready to install the skid plate. We have to trim the rear corner on the driver's side so it fits around the new frame bracket. So I'm gonna show you how to do that. We're gonna take a piece of tape. We wanna measure back from the edge, 2 3/8 for a 97 to 02 model. And then we're gonna need to trim down along here as well. So now that it fits, we're gonna grind and smooth out our edges. So now that we've trimmed our skid plate, we know that it fits, we're ready to install it. We're gonna go ahead and lift that up, insert the new bolts that Rough Country provided with us, and then we'll get that bolted on. Go ahead and set it up, and just get it started. I'm gonna use our 3/4 inch. So now we're gonna lower our drivetrain down, so that the studs pop through on the transmission mount, and then we're going to go ahead and reinstall our hardware. And we can remove this pull jack completely. All right, so the next step, we're going to support the front axle with jack stands, and we're going to disassemble the front. Since we have quick disconnects up here, we're just going to pull this pin. Same thing with the other side. Disconnect the sway bar links. Remove our tab nut, our bolt. We want to save that. All right, now we're going to take out the shocks. We're going to use a 1/2-inch wrench for the top, 1/2-inch socket for the bottom. 1/2-inch wrench on the top, 1/2-inch socket on the bottom. So now that we have the shocks unhooked, we're going to go ahead and loosen the axle, lower it down some. All right, now we're going to loosen up the control arms. First, we'll start by loosening the upper control arm using a 15mm. And we'll do the same thing for the other side. And we're going to use a 21 for the stock bolt, 21 wrench. Do the same thing on the other side. And loosen the lower bolt. Hopefully we can free up these springs. All right, so now we're gonna disconnect the brake line from the frame using a T40. We'll remove this bolt. That'll give us a little more drop and some room to play with. Do not lose that bolt. So next step, we're gonna disconnect the steering. Go ahead and pull the cotter pin out. Once you've broken it free, go ahead and take the nut off. Let that hang down. Put the nut back on, move on to the next step. So now that we have this dropped enough, springs are unloaded, we're gonna go ahead and support the pinion. And then we're gonna remove these control arms completely. Take the bottom out. Take the upper bolt out. It's going to be a 15 for a stock bolt. We're going to do the same thing for the other side. Remove the factory hardware. Last but not least, we'll take that bottom bolt out. We'll go ahead, loosen it up, get it to make its way out. Okay, so now that we have the control arms out of the vehicle, the next step is going to be cut these lower brackets off. So we're going to cut along the weld, and we'll separate the bracket. We're going to cut on the inside, the outside, and then we're going to have to cut across this seam as well. So the next step, now that we have the frame brackets cut off, we're going to assemble the front control arms, get ready to install them. First step, I'm going to take one of our bushings. You do not want to get this stuff on you. I'm going to go ahead and apply some anti-seize on the inside of there. We'll screw our joint in. Now, if you have issues screwing the joint in, you can take a screwdriver or any kind of tool that would fit in this bushing and help that to spin it in. So next step, we're going to measure 29 inches and 3/4 from center to center. So we have to go in a little bit more. Center of the bushing, center of the bushing. That's about 29 3/4. Go ahead and temporarily tighten that down. Then we'll get the other one assembled. Same thing goes for the other arm. I'm gonna go ahead and run this jam nut almost all the way up. Anti-seize, you wanna get that started. Center of the bushing, about, I need to unscrew it a little bit. Now before we install the control arms, you wanna clean the frame, wipe it down real nice, and we're just gonna put some paint on it to protect it, keep it from rusting. So now we're ready to install the lower control arms. First, we're gonna start off with the back end on the frame mount. We're gonna go ahead and insert the new bolt with a washer on that Rough Country provides us. Then we'll insert our washer and our nut. Now for the lower, where it bolts to the axle, we're gonna reuse the stock hardware. Same thing. We're gonna use the new bolt Rough Country provides. Go ahead and insert that bad boy in there. Once we got the top section in, I'm gonna go ahead and install the axle side. Roll that down. Next, we're gonna assemble the upper control arm. So we're gonna go ahead and run this jam nut all the way up, and we're gonna apply anti-seize. We'll screw a new joint in. So now we're gonna measure center to center, 15 1/4. This seems to be the best process to get that thing. We're gonna measure center to center. And we're gonna insert the new arm into the Jeep. And we're gonna take our new bolt, install a washer, insert it through the control arm, place another washer, and a nut. Now we're ready for the other side. Do the same thing for the other side. Insert our joint in the new arm, place our bolt through, install a washer, supplied nut. So now we're ready to tighten the control arms up, and then we're gonna reassemble the front. We're gonna use a 7/8 wrench for the inside, and we're gonna use a 13/16 for the bolt head. We're gonna use a 17mm for the upper bolts here. And now you wanna make sure that this joint is centered in here before you tighten it up. And once you have it centered, we'll go ahead and we'll lock these jam nuts down. Next, we're gonna take our adjustable wrench. We're gonna center this joint in here. Once we have it centered, we're gonna tighten it up. Lock it in place. Then we're gonna do the same thing on the other side. Once again, we're gonna center this joint here, and we're gonna go ahead, tighten that jam nut up. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. Now we're gonna raise our axle up some. Next, we're gonna reinstall the shock using the factory hardware. We're gonna use our 1/2-inch socket, 1/2-inch wrench. Reinstall the stock steering. We're gonna use our 19mm wrench for that. Next step, we're gonna lower this axle down. We're gonna get this track bar bolt in. Take our screwdriver, line that hole up. Insert our factory bolt. I'm gonna hand tighten it, make sure that you're not gonna cross thread anything. Last step for the front, we're gonna reinstall the sway bar end links. Since these are quick disconnects, I'm just gonna slide them on, push the pin in, lock them in place. Now we're ready to disassemble the rear. First thing, we're gonna support the axle with jack stands. First step, we're gonna remove the track bar bolt. This is not a factory bolt, but your factory one's gonna be an 18mm and a 15mm. Next step, we're gonna remove the lower shock bolts. So now that we have the shocks disconnected, we're gonna go ahead and lower the axle, try to get the springs out. Now we're gonna begin loosening up the control arms. First, we're gonna need to remove this nut. It's a 1/2-inch nut and it holds the emergency brake to the control arms. Same thing goes for the other side. Now we're going to remove the lower control arm. We're gonna use a 21mm socket, 21mm wrench. Same thing goes for the other side. Now before we remove the upper control arms, we're going to support the pinion just in case the axle decides to roll. Now we're going to remove the upper control arms. For the factory, you're going to use a 15mm socket and wrench. Pull that out. And we'll need to get the e-brake cable off of there. Then we can pull the control arm the rest of the way out. So the last step before we cut these mounts off, we're gonna remove this brake line bracket. And once again, you're gonna need a T40 Torx for that. Unscrew that. Then we have a couple lines up here. We'll go ahead and disconnect them. Move those up and out of the way. So we're now ready to cut the upper and lower brackets off. Now we're going to cut the upper control arm bracket off. For this one, we're going to use a Sawzall. So now that we've finished with the passenger side, we're going to go ahead and start on the driver's side. We're going to cut this upper control arm mount off. Since there's a brake line and some other wiring harnesses, we want to zip tie or bungee them out of the way. Make sure we don't cut through them. So we're going to release them from the frame here. So we're now ready to assemble the rear control arms. We're gonna begin by assembling the rear lowers. First thing, we're gonna take our joints, run the jam nut all the way up. We're gonna take our anti-seize, make sure to coat the inside nice, insert the joint. And we're gonna measure center to center for 27 3/4. Looks like we gotta go a little bit in. There we go. And we want our fitting, they're high clearance arms. We want our fitting to face up so we don't drag it on a rock. Same thing, run the jam nut all the way up. $27 3/4. So go ahead and run this jam nut down. So now that we have the rear lowers assembled, we're gonna go ahead and go with the uppers for the rear. We're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna run the jam nut all the way down, apply our anti-seize, and we'll get that threaded in. So for the upper control arms, we're gonna measure 29 inches center to center. Run those jam nuts down. Now we're ready to install them in the Jeep. So now that we've assembled the rear upper and lower control arms and adjusted them to the correct length, we're ready to install them into the Jeep. Using the hardware provided by Rough Country, we're gonna use a washer on our long bolt. We're gonna get this upper one situated in here. Then we're gonna use a washer. Push our bolt all the way through. We're gonna install our washer and our nut. Then for the axle side of the lower control arm, we're gonna reuse our factory bolt. And since these lowers tend to see a lot of mud and water, I recommend putting some anti-seize on them just to make it easier if you ever go to take them apart. So now that we have that, we'll start on the upper one. Lift up on the pinion so we can get this axle to rotate back and try to get this bolt to line up. Once you get the bolt through, we'll place a washer and a nut on it. Now we're ready to do the other side. We'll add our lower control arm. We're gonna add a washer and the nut. Same thing for the bottom on the other side. We're gonna reuse the stock hardware. Next step, we're gonna install the track bar bracket that Rough Country provides. This Jeep, since it was already lifted, has a track bar relocation bracket on it. However, we're gonna switch them out. You will need to drill a 5/16 hole for here and here. There's already holes in the axle. You just need to enlarge them and install the hardware. Also, there's a sleeve that goes in here for the bolt to keep it from crushing. So we're gonna get to that. Now that we have that unbolted, we're gonna go ahead and remove the track bar. So now we're ready to install the bracket. Go ahead and stick that bracket up there. We want to install our sleeve. So now we're ready to install our bracket. We're going to insert our bolt on our washer in there. Insert our sleeve in here. Get that bolt to drop down through that hole. And we're going to insert our bolt partially, just to hold it in place. And then we're gonna get this nut on there. So we're gonna use a magnet to hold our nut and washer and insert that in there. So we tried to install the bolt facing down and it would not allow us to get this tab nut on. So we decided to install it facing up and install the nut on the top side. So now we're gonna install the bottom side. Once again, the holes are already drilled. Tighten that up. And we'll tighten the top side up as well. So now that we have the track bar bracket and the track bar on, we're going to start with the reassembly of the rear. We're going to begin by installing the springs, and then we'll raise the axle up and install the shocks. Now with the new Rough Country long arms, it is going to roll the axle slightly, so you may have an issue when bolting the shock back on. You can either buy an adapter that moves the shock body out, or you can cut the spring perch. For this particular install, we're going to cut the spring perch a little bit so we can fit these shocks on. First thing you're going to want to do is you're going to either remove the shock completely or swing it out of the way. So we're going to do the same thing with the other side. We're going to align our shock up, and we're just going to make some reference marks of where we want to cut. And we'll go ahead and get our bungee it out of the way, and then we'll begin to cut. So now that we have the shocks back in, we're going to go around and tighten the control arms. Once we get the control arms all tightened up, we'll tighten up the jam nuts. We're going to go around and tighten the jam nuts. Just remember, you want to make sure that these spherical ends are centered before you tighten this jam nut. So the last thing to do when reassembling the rear is to install the track bar. So that finishes up the install of the Rough Country long arm upgrade kit. You're going to want to go around and just make sure you have everything tight. Once you get an alignment, you're going to want to have them recheck everything in about 500 miles and of course reinstall your wheels and tires.